The Daily Alaska Empire, May 14, 1948. New State of Israel announced. Proclamation says state of war exists between Arabs, Jewry. By the Associated Press. The new Jewish state of Israel, with the biggest active army in the Middle East, was proclaimed today in Tel Aviv at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. The Arab League Secretariat proclaimed in Damascus last night a state of war between the Arab countries and Palestine Jewry. Fighting resounded in half a dozen places in Palestine, but still there was no definite indication of a full-fledged Arab invasion. The British struck their colors over Government House in Jerusalem. General Sir Alan Cunningham, the High Commissioner, left Palestine and went aboard the cruiser Euryalus at Haifa. The British mandate ends at midnight, 2 p.m. PST. The United Nations still talked of ways to keep the peace in Palestine. Amman, Transjordan. If the Arabs were to invade Palestine, warrior King Abdullah's Transjordan capital Amman showed no signs. He has said he would personally lead armies of Transjordan, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon. The potential Arab invasion forces were estimated at 30,000. The Jews claim a field army of more than 50,000. Syria was placed under a state. Continued on page 5.
The Nome Nugget, May 14, 1948. News in brief. Flash Bulletin, Washington, AP. President Truman formally proclaimed United States recognition of the new Jewish state in Palestine. The president's announcement said that this country recognizes the provisional government as the de facto authority of the new state of Israel. In a separate statement, the White House said the proclamation of the Jewish state does not lessen the desire of the United States to obtain a Palestine truce. Jews proclaimed State of Israel. Undated International. By the Associated Press. The new Jewish state of Israel, with the biggest active army in the Middle East, was proclaimed today in Tel Aviv at 3 a.m. Nome time. The Arab League Secretariat proclaimed in Damascus last night a state of war between the Arab countries and Palestine Jewry. Fighting resounded in half a dozen places in Palestine, but still there was no definite indication of a full-fledged Arab invasion. The British struck their colors over Government House in Jerusalem. General Sir Alan Cunningham, the High Commissioner, left Palestine and went aboard the cruiser Euryalus at Haifa. The British mandate ends at midnight, 11 a.m. Nome time. The United Nations still talked of ways to keep the peace in Palestine.
The Evening Star, May 14, 1948. Israel proclaimed state by Jews, armies move to meet threat of Arab invasion as British leave. General Cunningham to sail tonight at mandate end. Bulletin. Lake Success, AP. The Political Committee of the Special Palestine Assembly voted today to send a United Nations mediator to the Holy Land. The vote was 37-0, with 15 abstentions. Text of proclamation on page A3. By the Associated Press. Tel Aviv, Palestine, May 14. The State of Israel, first Hebrew nation in 2,000 years, was born today in a Jewish declaration of independence asserting the historic right of the Jews of Palestine to reconstitute their national home. The proclamation by the National Council is effective at 1 minute after midnight 6:01 p.m. EDT, when Britain's 31-year rule of the Holy Land ends. The British High Commissioner already has left Palestine soil for a British cruiser, and the British Mandate government has left the holy city of Jerusalem. While Jewish forces and soldiers of the surrounding Arab countries prepared for war, the Jews proclaimed their right to a life of dignity, freedom, and labor. The declaration said this right was recognized by the United Nations. Threats on 3 fronts. The Arab League, meanwhile, planned to set up an administration, not a state, of their own in Palestine to function with occupying Arab forces if and when Palestine is invaded. In London, the Arab Office declared the termination of the British Mandate had created a disastrous situation in the Holy Land, but will at least give the Arabs the opportunity which they have never had until now of resisting the invaders face to face and without the intervention of a foreign power which has hitherto given them its protection. The General Secretariat of the Arab League has proclaimed a state of war existing with Palestine Jewry. Arabs win first real victory. As the Jewish state was born, the Arabs wrested their first real victory in Palestine. Arab, neutral, and Jewish sources confirmed that Arab legionnaires, supported by 2,000 tribesmen from the Hebron Hills, wiped out 4 Jewish colonies in the Kfar Etzion block south of Jerusalem, athwart the Arab invasion route from the south. The informant said 200 died in the battle, which ended last night. A number of prisoners were taken, including 4 physicians who were parachuted to aid the wounded yesterday. The Jewish Agency, declaring the Arabs had killed prisoners of war despite promises of adherence to international law, had urged the See Palestine, page A3.
The Southern Jewish Weekly, May 14, 1948. Zionists proclaim Liberation Week. The entire week ending May 16 is being observed on a nationwide scale as Liberation Week, set aside by the Zionist Organization of America for the enrollment within its ranks of the maximum number of American Jews. On Sunday, May 9th, more than 650 districts of the organization throughout the country held meetings and heard Zionist leaders call for accelerated support to the Palestine Yishuv in its struggle for national independence. In announcing the proclamation of Zionist Liberation Week, Dr. Emanuel Newman, president of the Zionist Organization of America, declared, "Liberation Week will be dedicated to calling upon every Jew to come forward voluntarily and proclaim his affiliation with the Zionist movement and his support of the historic nation-building enterprise proceeding at this very moment in Palestine. Those stalwart patriots who founded our great republic were of the same stuff, the same pattern, and the same courageous convictions as our young people of the Haganah and the battling Jewish armies of Palestine. We Jews in America," the ZOA had urged, "must, in tangible form, make evident to the Yishuv that we stand squarely behind them. In Palestine, they are mobilized for war and defense. Here we must mobilize for encouragement and support and all the assistance which we can properly extend to our embattled brothers. They want to know where we stand. Our answer must be clear, sharp, and ringing." Joseph Goldberg of Worcester, Massachusetts, is chairman of the National ZOA Membership Committee, and Herschel Auerbach is National ZOA Membership Director. Radio program to celebrate New Jewish State. To mark the proclamation of the new Jewish state in Palestine, the Eternal Light has prepared a special program for Sunday, May 16th, when it will offer a rebroadcast of the River Jordan, Irv Tunick's adaptation for radio of the book by Dr. Nelson Glueck, NBC Network, 12:30 to 1 o'clock p.m. DST. In addition, Rabbi Albert I. Gordon, Executive Director of the United Synagogue of America, will deliver a brief talk at the conclusion of the program, speaking from Chicago. The Eternal Light, a coast-to-coast radio program under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America and edited by Dr. Moshe Davis, is a public service presentation of the National Broadcasting Company. Dr. Glueck, Distinguished President of Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, is the noted archaeologist whose Transjordan excavations in 1932 revised all modern knowledge of Eastern Palestine and antiquity. The River Jordan tells of that fantastic river and its amazing valley, which have left their mark on more than 50,000 years of human history. It is the story, too, of the flourishing communal villages lining the Jordan shores, where only a quarter of a century ago, the first 12 Halitzim, pioneers, came to an arid wilderness. Through faith and indefatigable effort, a modern miracle of reclaimed land took place. These are the people, these and the others who followed, who are the citizens of the new Jewish state, and who will be greeted by the Eternal Light broadcast on May 16th. Local Jewish leaders leave for convention. Rabbi Sanders A. Tofield, Mr. Harry Genzier, Mr. Joseph Hackel, and Mr. Jacob Becker have been elected to represent the Jacksonville Jewish Center at the Biennial Convention of the United Synagogue of America, National Organization of Conservative Jewish Congregations, to be held at the Stevens Hotel in Chicago May 13th through 17. More than 1,000 delegates, representing 400 conservative Jewish synagogues and 420,000 conservative Jews, are expected to attend the convention, which will be highlighted by a special session on the Jewish state. Promise and challenge to be addressed by Mr. Bartley C. Crum, noted author of Behind the Silken Curtain. Dr. Israel Goldstein, chairman of the World Confederation of General Zionists, and by a prominent Haganah leader. Also planned for the convention are seminars on withered Jewish education, living as a Jew today, a forum on youth, and the problem of congregational management.
The St. Croix Avis, May 15, 1948. Jews proclaim independent state of Israel. Jews realize dream of 2,000 years. At 1 minute past midnight, David Ben-Gurion formally proclaimed the existence of the independent state of Israel before a gathering of 400 persons in Tel Aviv. Almost immediately, the blue and white stripes of Israel fluttered from flagstaffs, and men, women, and children went wild with joy in the streets with the realization of a Jewish dream of 2,000 years. At the same time, Haganah troops were marching toward the fighting fronts to meet the Arab onslaught. Ben-Gurion, a 60-year-old Polish Jew, will serve as premier and war minister. His proclamation said in part, "We, the members of the National Council, representatives of continued on page for martial law in Egypt, army in Palestine. Martial law has been declared in Egypt as its armies crossed the Palestinian border at 1 minute after midnight. Simultaneously, other Arab countries sent their armies to fight for the liberation of the country, which has been claimed by the Jews and proclaimed as a sovereign state. The Egyptian foreign minister has issued a communique imposing a strict censorship on all telephone, cable, and other communications. 2 military governors have been AP," continues on page 3.
The Evening Star, May 15, 1948. 2 air raid made on Tel Aviv. Egypt's army enters Holy Land, claiming destruction of village. Haganah forces move to counter Syria-Lebanon attack. Zionists here celebrate at flag raising. Hold prayer services today. Story on page A3. By the Associated Press, Tel Aviv, Israel, May 15th. The Jewish Army Haganah announced today that invasion troops have penetrated into Israel following air attacks on Tel Aviv and a settlement in the Negev area. Tel Aviv, temporary capital of the state newly born and recognized by the United States, was attacked twice by light planes. The planes dropped bombs and strafed ground objects with machine gun fire, Haganah announced, adding that 1 plane was shot down and an Egyptian pilot taken captive. The Haganah announcement gave no details on the reported ground invasion, nor on the air attack against a settlement in the Negev, the southern desert area. Attacks 3 hours apart. The Jewish army said the 2 attacks on Tel Aviv came 3 hours apart, shortly after Jews had danced in the streets at news of the birth of their nation and the American recognition of its existence. The Jewish army drove north in Galilee to bolster the area against possible invasions from Syria and Lebanon. Along the coastal area north of Haifa, Arab villages have been cleared from Acre north to Nahariya and beyond, Haganah said. The Arab city of Acre sued for peace after a sharp night attack, Jewish informants in Haifa reported. Haganah announced the entire population of Kfar Etzion settlement, south of Jerusalem and Bethlehem, has been wiped out by the Arab Legion. Men and women alike were slain, the Jewish army said. The Arabs inflicted casualties and took prisoners in 2 tiny communities of the Kfar Etzion block. Resistance is continuing in another settlement there. Censorship imposed. The government imposed censorship, informing correspondents they will be given security guidance on information sent out on the air attacks. Haganah rushed its troops to all the frontiers, bent on shortening lines and building up defenses against invasion. In Haifa, where the flag of Israel flutters on Mount Carmel, overlooking the new state's chief port, Jewish sources said Haganah is seeking to bring the entire northern frontier area under control. This would mean uniting Upper Galilee, which would have been Arab under the United Nations Partition Plan, with Israel's territory. Haganah said its forces moved in swiftly in Jerusalem, areas abandoned by the British yesterday, with the end of their 31-year rule. A UN consular team is continuing negotiations for a truce in the Holy City, Haganah said. Haganah announced that the Jewish settlement of Adarat, opposite the Kalandia airport north of Jerusalem, has been evacuated by Jews following Arab attacks. Border towns shelled. Haganah said the Jewish villages of Gesher, Asset, and Shar Hagolan along the Transjordan frontier were shelled this morning. The first air attack on Tel Aviv awakened thousands of residents and sent them hurrying into the streets. By the time the second attack came, the streets were crowded with the normal Sabbath crowds. The attacks came on the outskirts of the city, however, and could not be seen from the center. One lone attacker circled the center of the city at 7,000 feet. No air raid siren sounded. although Tel Aviv presumably has them. Civil guards patrolled the streets, wearing armbands much like those of London's wartime air raid wardens. First raid at 6 a.m. The first air attack came at 6 a.m. today in Tel Aviv. The raiding planes were described unofficially as Spitfires or Spitfire-type fighters. They came in low, dived and dropped 6 bombs at the edge of the Tel Aviv airport, near the power station. Airport workers, see Israel, page A3. U.S. may lift arms embargo on Palestine. The United States may lift its Palestine arms embargo as an aftermath of its recognition of a new Jewish state. A White House source said today. Such a move has been under study for some time, the informant said, along with the question of exchanging diplomatic representatives with the new nation. Main American efforts, it was made clear, will continue to be directed toward winning a truce in the Holy Land conflict. President Truman stressed this objective in a statement issued last night, granting de facto recognition to the Provisional Jewish Regime. Ban imposed December 5th. The arms embargo was imposed by the United States December 5th after the United Nations asked all member governments to help halt. See recognition. Page A2. UN Council called to emergency session on Egypt's invasion. Cairo government note declares that forces have entered Palestine. By the Associated Press, Lake Success, May 15th. An emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council was called today to consider an Egyptian government note that Egyptian troops are entering Palestine. The meeting was set for 3 p.m. Alexander Parody of France, President of the Security Council, ordered the emergency meeting after the UN Secretariat received a note from the Egyptian Foreign Minister. There had been speculation that the Council would meet today to consider information from the Security Council's Truce Commission in Jerusalem, but word had gone out to the delegates that there would be no meeting. However, Mr. Parody called an emergency session at 11:45 a.m. on hearing of the Egyptian note. Assembly session ends. Surprise American recognition of the new state of Israel overshadowed the failure of the United Nations to do anything about the Palestine crisis. An emergency session of the 58-nation General Assembly adjourned last night after 4 weeks of fruitless debate. The only affirmative action taken was to authorize appointment of a UN mediator for the Holy Land. This man, to be selected by the Big Five, will seek to bring together the Arabs and the Jews for peace. In its final hours, the Assembly was thrown into confusion by President Truman's announcement of American recognition. The Jews were jubilant. The Arabs shouted they had been duped. Guatemala quickly followed the American pattern. Zionist officials expected other nations, including Russia, to fall in line. Russian recognition indicated. Andrei Gromyko, Soviet Deputy Foreign Minister, told the Assembly that the Jewish state is in existence. He thus put the Soviet Union on record without announcing recog. CUN, page A3.
The Sunday Star, May 16, 1948. I will make thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great. Genesis 15:2. New Israel state suffers invasion from 3 sides by Arab armies. Truman may modify ban on arms. Temporary capital of Tel Aviv is hit by 4 air attacks. Israel calls on UN to stop invasion by sanctions or military force. Page A4. By the Associated Press, Tel Aviv, Israel, May 15th. The Army of Israel said its newborn state was invaded today from the north and south, shelled from the east and bombed and machine-gunned from the air. Haganah, now the army of a new nation already recognized by the United States, said the Lebanese army attacked across the border from the north, the Egyptian army speared into the Negev desert, and Transjordan's Arab Legion shelled 4 settlements on the Jordan Valley frontier. Tel Aviv, temporary capital of Israel, underwent its 4th air attack late today, and Haganah ordered the entire city blacked out tonight. Planes were over the city most of the day, and it was difficult to differentiate one attack from the other. First immigrants arrive. All attacks, including the first by 3 to 6 light planes, were on the outskirts. They did not interfere much with Jews celebrating the first Sabbath in almost 2,000 years on soil they claimed as their very own. Israel received its first immigrants since becoming a state, 300 European Jews who arrived in Haifa from Genoa. They held British visas, but were given Israel entry permits in their stead. Two bombing and strafing attacks this morning killed one person and injured 6 in Tel Aviv. Haganah said one of the attacking planes, a Spitfire, fell into our hands and we captured its Egyptian pilot. A half-dozen bombs fell at the edge of the Tel Aviv airport near the Power and Light building. Other planes attack. Foreign planes, not officially identified, also attacked the northern and southern sections of the Jewish state, Haganah said. Spitfires hit settlements in the Samak district on the southeastern shore of Lake Tiberias, Galilee, near the junction of the Syrian and Transjordan borders. Haganah said Arab Legion artillery smashed at 4 settlements in this same area, Ein Geb on the eastern shore of Tiberias, and Ash Yaakov, Shar Hagelin, and Gasher farther south, Haganah broadcast said. All these places are in Jewish Palestine as delineated by the UN. The Legion was said also to have captured a power plant near Naharaim, a town which is in Transjordan. Other air attacks were made on the airdrome near Rehovot south of Tel Aviv in Israel, and leaflets demanding surrender were dropped on Urim, a settlement in the Negev 10 miles from the Egyptian border. Egyptian regulars active. Haganah said 2 western Negev settlements were under heavy attack by the Egyptians. These were Nairam, only 4 miles inside the Palestine frontier, and Kfar Daram, which lies 10 miles from the frontier along the main highway to Gaza. Haganah said the attack on Nairam, with tanks and shell fire, was by regular forces of the Egyptian army. Both Nairam and Kfar Daram lie just outside the borders of the new state as defined in the United Nations Plan for Partition. In the far north, Haganah said it occupied the tiny Arab village of Malaika about a mile from the Lebanese border inside Israel, but that regular units of the Lebanese army were counter-attacking there this afternoon. Late advices to Haganah sources in Haifa said Arabs, using heavy artillery, were repulsed in attacks on Shar Hagelin and surrounding area near Transjordan. These sources also said Jews took several Arab villages on the slopes of Mount Carmel and near Afula. Jewish sources in Haifa said Haganah troops were also in control of Ras en Nakira, a northern frontier post on the west coast. These troops were reported driving north to consolidate the western area against a Lebanese invasion. Acre, first key point north of Haifa, sued for peace after a sharp night battle, the informant said. Haganah warns Arabs. Haganah broadcast said also that the Arab Legion south of Jerusalem was attacking Masut Yitzhak, a settlement just north of Kfar Etzion, which Haganah said the Arab Legion had wiped out. Revidin and Ein Zurim, 2 other nearby settlements, were probably already in Legion hands, Haganah added. Haganah warned the Arabs to respect the Geneva Convention for Treatment of War Prisoners, saying the Jews also held many Arab prisoners. In Jerusalem itself, the British Army announced it had completed evacuation of all its forces. Haganah said its troops were taking over British installations as soon as the British stepped out. The United Nations Consular Commission continued to negotiate for a truce in the Holy City. Artillery, planes, light armor spearhead attack on Zionism. Egyptians push 20 miles inside Palestine. Abdullah's Legion occupies Jericho. By The Associated Press. Cairo, Egypt, May 15. The Arabian armies of Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, and Lebanon, supported by artillery, planes, and light armor, speared into Palestine today in a coordinated attack on Zionism. The Egyptian Defense Ministry said the vanguard of regular Egyptian troops reached Gaza tonight, while Egyptian volunteers occupied the hills of Ali Mintar on Gaza's outskirts. Gaza is a Mediterranean port town, 20 miles inside Palestine, and situated on the main coastal railroad. A ministry communiqué said Egyptian artillery destroyed the settlements of Al-Dongair and Kfar Jayim in the Gaza area. Al-Dongair is 13 miles and Kfar Jayim 10 miles southeast of Gaza. King Abdullah's Transjordan Arab Legion, moving in a column of armored vehicles, crossed the Jordan on the Allenby Bridge and moved into eastern Palestine. They occupied Jericho, 20 miles northeast of Jerusalem, and a broad area of the Judean hills, where an Arab population predominates. Syrian troops, said dispatches from Damascus, also crossed the Jordan just below the Sea of Galilee and occupied a small bridgehead inside Palestine. A 20-mile-long convoy began streaming into the country about 2:30 a.m. Lebanese troops claimed the capture of the village of Malikia, a mile inside the northern Palestine frontier. Baghdad dispatches said the Iraqi government announced tonight that its army had entered Palestine, but did not disclose when or at what place. Iraqi armored and other units arrived a week ago at Mafraq, Transjordan, and it was considered probable that the invasion came. See Egyptian, page A5. Study of exports follows surprise U.S. recognition. By the Associated Press. President Truman may lift or modify his embargo on shipment of American guns, bullets, planes, and other weapons to warring Jewish and Arab countries in the Middle East, it was learned yesterday. A White House official disclosed that Mr. Truman is studying the whole question of arms exports in connection with the Palestine issues. He thus was following up his surprise announcement of American recognition of the new Jewish state of Israel. Some support for lifting the embargo came from members of Congress, where comment generally has upheld recognition of the new Jewish state. However, Representative Voris, Republican, of Ohio, warned against furnishing arms in a manner which would cause the United States to take sides in a holy war. Senator Chavez, Democrat of New Mexico, said he favors removing the embargo for the Jews only. He added, "Let the others get arms from England." Embargo called unfair. Senator Johnson, Democrat of Colorado, expressed himself as sure for it and described the embargo on arms for Jews as a damn disgrace, the most unfair thing that has ever happened. He declared Arabs were already getting American and British arms, said an American military mission had been in Saudi Arabia since 1943 teaching them how to fight, and added, "We have not been neutral." Mr. Voris declared, "We must not take sides in a holy war. I think we should decide on a policy based on a consistent principle, and that principle must not involve taking sides in a holy war." Senator Taft, Republican of Ohio, told reporters he'll take part in a rally tonight in New York's Madison Square Garden to celebrate the founding of the state. He recalled that he long ago had urged recognition of the Jewish state and also urged that the United States join in forming an international police force through the United Nations to maintain order in the Middle East. Lauded as judicious move. Senator Magnuson, Democrat, of Washington, commented, "The action of the president in recognizing the State of Israel is to be lauded as a judicious move of practical statesmanship. At the moment of Jewish independence, he made clear to the world that the United States is on the side of justice in the Holy Land. I am confident that the United States, under his leadership, will devote its tireless efforts to recognition of the rights of the Jews and the Arabs in Palestine. That the arms question may rapidly become an urgent one, at least in Jewish eyes, was indicated by news dispatches pouring in from the Holy Land about broad-scale fighting there. These indicated that before the newly proclaimed Jewish homeland was 24 hours old, Arab armies were seeking its destruction with slashing attacks from the north, south, and east. President Truman and Secretary of State Marshall have thus far withheld any sign of what their attitude toward Arab assaults on the State of Israel might be. But officials of lesser rank said they probably would have to decide whether this constituted aggression under the United Nations Charter, and whether the UN Security Council should therefore be requested to take action against the Arabs. A decision on who, if anyone, is see embargo, page A4.